there is just something about the way that Vinicius Jr changed this last year, which I think partially can be attributed to the fact that he didn't win the Ballon d'Or and wasn't pleased with it, can be attributed to the change with Mbappé, and I think the fact that he just wasn't as good year over year. But I still think he can be that player with Mbappé in the team. He's got to figure out how to do it.
Plenty of highs and lows for Kylian Mbappé and Vinny Jr at Real Madrid, of course, last season. No major trophies to show for it as well. Here are the numbers. 56 matches for Mbappé, 53 for Vinny Jr. More goals for Mbappé, 43 plays 21. More assists, as you would expect from Vinny Jr, 15 for him, 5 for Mbappé. Chris, let's chat about the arrival of Mbappé and how that's affected Vinny Jr, because we've had a body of work now. We've had a whole season to compare the two. Do you feel that the Brazilian is losing potentially his identity at the club because his importance has been a little bit diminished naturally when you've got someone like Mbappé playing with him?
Perhaps. I mean, I still think he can be the same footballer. Mbappé, while wanting to shade towards the left, doesn't always occupy that same space. What do you think of Vinicius Jr at his best? He is heels on the chalk of the touchline or in transition, running at defenders. I still think he can be that guy. It's just about trying to figure out how to interpret that role in this team with Mbappé up front, making the runs that he does, and also I think that sort of intangible idea of whose team is it, that conversation that we hear all the time, whose team is it, and it feels like it is gravitating towards Mbappé. If you look at the statistical figures, his goal scoring did go down, and I'm curious, you look at year over year, how that happened in a fewer number of matches. How is it that Vinicius Jr was one player when he had that free reign of the left and Bellingham was in theory playing through the middle but wasn't quite occupying the space, and now? And I think there is that de-emphasis of Vinicius Jr because you have to make the Mbappé thing work. You have to kind of build a team around him. Mbappé also kind of goes and gets goals on his own accord in terms of following goals in terms of getting penalties as well. So I think there is just something about the way that Vinicius Jr changed this last year, which I think partially can be attributed to the fact that he didn't win the Ballon d'Or and wasn't pleased with it, can be attributed to the change with Mbappé, and I think the fact that he just wasn't as good year over year. But I still think he can be that player with Mbappé in the team. He's got to figure out how to do it.
You mentioned how he plays when he plays well, you know, coming in off that touchline. Do you think he needs to adapt his game? I mean, obviously you're suggesting that, but what can he do to adapt his game to accommodate Mbappé playing in the same team as him and then still be able to contribute the numbers that we've seen in previous seasons in terms of goals and assists?
I think to make that happen, you have to think a little bit more about combination play rather than individual play. We see his work as 1v1, going at a defender. But I think now that you have to figure this out with so many other players. We see Bellingham in the team and obviously that incredible front three. You have to figure out how to combine with others, assist with others in a way that is not just necessarily about giving that assist, but also about working spaces so that opponents are terrified of you. Whereas I do think that Vinny Jr at times is playing his own game when he's at his best, and everyone else just kind of adjusts around him. And I think now, look, you're playing at Real Madrid, and I appreciate that for a moment. It looked like he was going to win the Ballon d'Or. It looked like he was going to be the main man, but Real Madrid have been chasing Mbappé for 2 years. And yes, you might say privately, oh man, I wish it were still my team. I wish we hadn't brought this guy in because he takes up my space and he doesn't do what I do. But when you play for Real Madrid, they're going to keep looking for the biggest stars. That's what they do. They're going to keep looking for better and better, more world class and more world class, and you have to figure out ways to adjust in that. Part of that is on the manager. Ancelotti, obviously very good with personalities, but might not have been able to figure out the solution. Maybe this is on Xabi Alonso now, but I do think that for Vinicius Jr, he has to figure out a little bit more how to play with other players and figure out how to combine more and sometimes be the decoy, sometimes be the players that you play off of rather than through. And I think that's the biggest thing for him to adjust, sort of that team quality.
Could Xabi Alonso's personality and style of management, with what we've seen in his career so far, suit Vinny Jr better than Ancelotti did?
Maybe. I do think that it might not even necessarily even be the personality. It might be the tactics and the way that he coaches. We saw that Bayer Leverkusen side, and not just attack with 1 or 2, they attack with 6 or 7. And so every player kind of has their role to play. Florian Wirtz obviously so important in that final third, but Jeremy Frimpong and Grimaldo and Boniface and all these players got involved in the attack. And so there is enough for everyone to have their go, for everyone to have their chance. And I do think that Vinny Jr. can potentially thrive in a different tactical setup where everyone, in theory, gets their shots, if we're going to kind of use an NBA term. And I think that's kind of what Xabi Alonso has to do now, is figure out from a tactical point of view, because I don't think that it gets much better than Ancelotti's management, his personality, and how he's able to get the best out of players. But how do you actually, on the field, make it work so that 4 players who are all incredibly brilliant, who all have their attacking qualities, and can have a team built around them, function together? I think that really is the goal for Xabi Alonso now.
And there was quite a bit of a narrative pointing at Vinny Jr. and what he wasn't doing, scoring goals, assisting goals. But is there also some responsibility on Mbappé to try and accommodate him? And that was maybe part of the reason why Real Madrid didn't lift the trophies they wanted to last season, was because, well, he came in and he didn't find a way to accommodate some of these other players.
Well, I think we've seen at Paris Saint-Germain, in the years in which they didn't win the Champions League, they had a brilliant goal scorer. It's kind of what you want. Every major European club talks about going and getting a striker, going and getting someone who can deliver 35 to 45 goals over the course of a club season in all competitions. He's been that guy for several years now, and yet they have not gone on and won the big prize. This year, they didn't even go on to win La Liga. So you do have to look at a little bit of, are these statistics and not quite impact? And I think that is the question that Mbappé will have to ask himself. Is he impacting the team, or is he just scoring goals? I appreciate how stupid that is to say in a sport where the object is to go and score as many goals as possible, that maybe the goals are not quite delivering the impact that you would expect from a player like Mbappé. So how can you be more productive for the team, not just in goal scoring, but in terms of actually making the team work? I absolutely think he has to kind of examine that a little bit. When you look at the lack of success that he's had in major European competitions, when you look at some of these moments where you can say, oh, maybe with Mbappé in the team, they should be having more team success. Well, why aren't they? Why aren't they? I think that's kind of something that he has to ask himself.
How crucial is the first part of the season up until the January transfer window for these two playing together in the same team? Obviously, you've got the Club World Cup right now, but up until that January transfer window, we've got Vinny Jr. and Kylian Mbappé trying to make it work with Xabi Alonso as the manager. Do you get the inclination that if it doesn't, one of them, and it probably would be Vinny Jr., is going to be looking for an exit route?
I think that is a possibility. I really do. And I don't know how big of a possibility, but I think there's a chance that maybe at the end of next season, ultimately it comes down to Real Madrid winning. I think even at this Club World Cup, there's more pressure on it than you would think, considering that it's a brand new tournament, considering that there's been this sort of reaction of how important is this really. But I think we're seeing now, based off the level of competition and based off of how much scrutiny there is on all the teams, especially the European sides that aren't succeeding, if they go out and deliver another performance like they did against Al Hilal, that there's going to be pressure from the word go. They have to win everything at Real Madrid. That is the standard, and they have to look impressive while doing so. So I think that every day there is scrutiny on this situation, and at some point the president is going to make a big call, because he's not afraid to make big calls on if Xabi Alonso can't get it done, maybe it's another coach, or if it just doesn't work, that they figure out a way to offload one of them and find another complementary piece for either Mbappé or for Vinny Jr.